So, the second character from Dance Dissection is none other than Ren the Raccoon. Now, while I played this music background, I'm just going to tell you a few things about her. So, anyone who's seen her first analysis video knows that she is a very important character. A very important character. Ren is basically the mentor figure to Oblivion. Without having her around, it's like saying we don't have an Oblivion with a proper sword. She helps him mature and become the hero he aims to be, and is still the hero today. To their own benefits and consequences, Ren changes Oblivion and helps him become such an important figure, and also inspiring him to be there for others, to protect others, to help make people believe in what they stand for, and to defend the cause that they will always fight for. She has that kind of power. But we're not talking about Oblivion today. Today, we are talking about Ren. And as this music fades away, you will get to know more about her as a character, and how, personally, I feel how influential she really was. Now, just like any analysis video, I'm going to do a character and basically analyze them based upon their backstory, their abilities, their personality, their motives, their strengths or weaknesses, their hobbies, and their central ideologies. Now, this video will not be edited because I have not yet learned to be a cameraman expert or a computer man expert, so bear with me, as well as this shaky camera angle. But for now, this is what I can offer. Also, one more thing. In regards to this video, it won't be as long as the previous one, as Ren is a bit less developed than Oblivion, and as a whole, her story I don't want to spoil too much because a lot of it will be revealed in Magnolia Tales whenever I have the time to finally work on it a bit more. And also, a few more things before I begin. Ren as a character, I will say this. What can I say about her? Well, she's relatively very complicated, and you will get to learn more about that as we go along. And this video might be a bit higher rated, like PG-13 or higher, because Ren has arguably perhaps one of the worst background ever known in my at least in my storycast. There might be people who have characters that have much worse storylines. I can imagine that, but Ren arguably, at least in my cast, should have the worst, if not the worst one as of now. Now, to begin with, this picture right here is actually a picture of a knife. The reason why I'm showing this picture instead of her own character art is because there is no actual drawing or at least any illustration example of her that's very accurate, or at least one that I actually want her to be pictured as. Now, I promise you, before we actually, I know this wasn't something I was going to explain, but I will go more about her description as well. Ren is around 2.5 feet, a lot shorter than Oblivion, and in terms of Magnolian standards, she is rather short. And she has a very slim and a very small build. Physically, she looks very not intimidating at all. Like, she is very small, short, doesn't have a lot of muscle on her. She appears like to be someone you can just bully across the middle school or someone. But appearances aren't everything. She is the perfect example of do not judge a book by its cover, because she represents that example very, very well. More about her description. She has red eyes. I believe right now I'm thinking she should be colored like reddish brown. I believe that's how her fur should be. I'm still have yet to decide on that. And she often, because of the way she dresses, she does not dress very well. She's someone who you will find out later as I go in this analysis video that she's not very, very well off. She doesn't have a lot to dress with, so I would say often she sports like a very old shirt that's very tattered and ripped. Shorts probably barely even there at this point. If she ever has shoes, I don't think she'll ever wear shoes. Probably not even wear shoes, probably barefoot all the time. And, well, she doesn't have time to really do her hair as much. I often have Magnolia characters with hair to make them stand out. And also, this isn't like the Sonic continuity, the Sonic the Hedgehog continuity, where a lot of the characters like Tails or Wave or Jet the Hawk, these characters, they have their own version of hair, but my characters, at least the characters at Magnolia, tend to have hair that's a bit more traditional, like what humans have as hair. And yes, Ren is a character also from Magnolia, just like I said previously, Oblivion is a Magnolian, Ren is also a Magnolian. So once more, we will go back to more lore on behind the planet Magnolia whenever we talk about Ren. And one more thing before we go to her backstory, I will say one more thing. I don't exactly know the knife that she wields, so that is something I don't really know yet. I may have an idea later. This could be an example of a knife. I tend to not think she has a very big knife, like she probably doesn't have a butcher knife, like a very small knife, pocket knife perhaps. But as I go more into about her, you will see that even the smallest of objects can be sometimes the sharpest and most dangerous of objects. Now, before I get too ahead of myself here, let's go in the order that we should be doing. So, regarding her backstory. Ren, when she was little in Magnolia, she never really knew her parents at all. From the very start of her childhood, when we get to Magnolia Tales, incoming spoilers alert, she does not actually know her parents. She is presumed to be perhaps abandoned by them. We don't really know biologically who her real parents are. We do know that she happens to live in the streets of the poorest of poor Magnolia streets in the Raccoon tribe. Just like Oblivion used to be in the Opossum tribe, Ren is in the Raccoon tribe, respectively. And because she's in the Raccoon tribe, they tend to only be the only people that live there. The only people that tend to live there are raccoons. So among her kind, there weren't a lot of raccoons who took her in very nicely. She did have some adopted parents who cared for her, especially in her first 3 years, 0 to 3, I would say. So when she was a baby till she was like becoming a little child, she had someone take care of her because, of course, just like how I like to say, Magnolia, the age spectrum in Magnolia is similar to the humans, us, in Earth. So when you're 3 years old and when you're a Magnolian, you are 3 years old when you're a human in Earth. So yes, she was still too young, but of course she had to be taken care of. Otherwise she wouldn't have lived at all, because back then there's no way she could have learned to fight or to do any of the talents that she later acquires. So she was lucky. So even though she was abandoned, she did have some adopted parents. We don't know who they were yet, and I won't reveal them anytime soon. Not yet, until you read Magnolia Tales. But, more onto her again. She had adopted parents. Eventually, we learn later on is that her adopted family had a lot of raccoon children. She was not the only child. The family was way too big, and they could not support Ren at all, whatsoever. So Ren, it was a matter of time before she was sold away or given away to the next foster parent or next adopted parent. And she was around, let's say, 3 to 4, I would say. Around 3 to 4, she kind of taught herself in a way. Now, don't get me wrong, she couldn't figure out everything on her own, and I feel like that would be unrealistic, but she did, the few friends she did have, the few friends that she did make, and keep in mind, Ren, in her life, she was in poverty. Her adopted parents were not anywhere better off. In fact, the only thing they gave to her was just making sure she lived, had some food, maybe some basic clothing to keep yourself warm from the cold, and some shelter. And that's really it. I mean, her adopted parents weren't really nice to begin with. They weren't very supportive of her, and they had too many mouths to feed, too many people to tend and to take care of. So it obviously made sense that Ren didn't really have a lot of affection for them. And as a whole, this will become very important in her character because Ren, whenever I think about her, the one key word you should know about her is she's all about survival. And so even when she was little, when she was still a child, when she was still 4 years old, she still had to survive. And even with her adoptive parents' help, they didn't really offer much. So she eventually escaped, potentially escaping slavery, because slavery was a very common fate for the Magnolians, especially when you're in the lowest of the low. Not even Oblivion ever fell into that situation, but Ren almost did. In fact, I will say she actually did went into slavery a few times herself, but more into that later. So when she was 4, she escaped, and she acquired a few skills along the way. She sort of learned how to read and write, thanks to the help of a few Magnolia raccoons who she was accompanied with, while she wasn't the only one who left. And she learned how to fight a little bit, learning from mostly observation. There weren't any actual blade masters, and unlike Oblivion, who had the pleasure of having Orion and his father, and later on Ren to teach him, Ren had really no one. She mostly observed people, the way they hold their stance, the way they angled their blades, the way they positioned themselves. Now, Ren didn't start off very powerful either when she was little. She had to learn her way across, just like all Magnolians had to at the time. And how she learned was that, again, she observed others, and she sparred with the few who could train her, who could teach her. I will say Ren did sort of had a mentor figure, an older sister-like figure, whose name I will not reveal because I have yet to decide her name. So this character is actually a work in progress, and I have not yet decided her just yet, as of now at least. But she helped her hone a few skills. And it is thanks to her that Ren eventually adopted the idea that the knife is her favorite and to go-to weapon. Ren isn't only skilled in knives, but it is her main weapon of choice. And the reason being is because Ren, as a character, she learns later on that a knife is most useful to her when it comes to sneak attacks, when it comes to deception, when it comes to instant kills and assassination attempts. That becomes more of her fighting style. And the reason why is because Ren, as a character, when she was little, when she was still learning her ways to survive out there in her travels, again, she didn't have any professional teaching, so the easiest weapon to learn is the smallest of weapons, and the easiest to hold weapons, and the weapons that, generally speaking, can kill from afar, from close distance. She liked the knife, not for its looks, or for its, I suppose, its features, or more so, just more simply because it's practical. It's very handy, it's very quick. Most people, they tend to underestimate that a knife is so small against a sword that could be so big, or an axe that is so strong. But a knife has its own specialties. It's fast, it's quick. If you're unaided, or you tend to overestimate your own abilities, you may not notice a knife right behind you, right about to hit your neck, and yeah, you know what goes on. So Ren liked the knife, and even when she was little, Ren was very poor, like I said, and her body, I will say physically, she wasn't in the best of conditions. See, when you're poor, right, when you're a poor Magnolian, this is fact as well when you're on Earth, right, like, us humans, right, okay, when you're poor, you don't have a lot of money, you can't buy medicine, you can't buy really good food, so your nutrition is not very well off, you don't have a lot of, your body's not really at its best optimal health. You happen to be naturally a lot short and small. So your body build is really small. Your body stature is smaller than any typical Magnolian. So this would be like saying if someone was, let's say, around 4 feet tall on Earth, and he's an adult. Right. So you're already shorter. Physically, you're already weaker than others, naturally, unfortunately. And your body's already, unfortunately, not in the best conditions because of the living conditions you're with. So you're basically susceptible to disease and to these hard conditions. Naturally, she will not choose a weapon that's very heavy or a weapon that will hinder her or slow her down. And that's what also led to her choosing a knife. And yes, Ren often did feel the disease. In fact, when she was little, there were many times she almost died, thanks to her mentor at the time and the poor raccoons that accompanied her for the short time that they were short friends with. They often taught her how to fight. They often taught her that moving one's body, exercising, keeping fit is the only way naturally to not only help you strengthen yourself and be prepared to defend yourself and to fight against those who try to oppress you or oppress others, but it's a good way to exercise and keep your body in shape, to keep you living, to prolong your life a bit more. Because it is a total fact, yes, that if you don't exercise, guys, you will die much faster. You might have obesity, diabetes, blood pressure might be a bit high. You know, you may gain a little too much weight. Health fact. And that's a true fact as well in Magnolia. So naturally, Ren would be very agile, and she learned to. So it's like this: she trained her body literally to become the weapon, and she literally trained it at such a young age. And one other thing again is that as she gets older, she turns around, let's say 5 or 6, around 2 years afterwards. She eventually has to desert her group of friends because oftentimes they were under attack. They often huddled in small tents. They had no place to go, so they had no home. Again, at the time, foster parents or adopted parents weren't really any help, so they didn't really have anyone to support them at all. So often they were under attack by bandits or thieves or, bad people. I hate to... this is where I'm saying I'm getting to the PG-13 criteria and above, but there were bad people, like not only who stole your money, people who want power, who are corrupt, who have lust, bad people in general. When you're in the streets, even in Magnolia, it's a beautiful place, but the inhabitants there aren't the nicest of people. They're not very nice, and they will kill you, and they will murder you, and they'll rape you, and they will do anything they can to steal from you, anything they want ever. So it really is, at the time, survival of the fittest. And Ren unfortunately had to bounce back and forth. She was kind of like the Robin Hood at the time too, because at the time she also helped those she could find, and help she did. At one point when she was 8, boom, 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 she met Oblivion. And this is where her journey or her relationship with Oblivion begins, as a teacher-to-student relationship. Now, the reason why I'm jumping ahead so much is because I don't exactly have the details covered yet for Ren's early life too well yet, but this is the basic details. At this point, she meets Oblivion. We already knew how Oblivion was like back then. He was 11 at the time, and she was 8. They befriend each other. She later on helps an adopted daughter, who is Desdemona, who also lived under similar conditions like Ren, but unfortunately, she was much younger. I mean, Desdemona was 1 year old, and she was still a baby, so, Ren had to take care of her. Not only that, but Desdemona was an actual raccoon, so, like teacher, like student, so to speak. And, she saw herself in Desdemona, and that's why she grew care for her. The two closest people she ever had from then on were Desdemona and Oblivion. Who does she like more of the other two? I can't really say. I don't know. And I have yet to figure that out myself. I think she liked them both equally. And as you've seen in Oblivion's analysis video, she later on helps Oblivion and does so many great things. I will say this, I will start to come to wrap because her story is that short, literally not very long afterwards. And I will also say this, as a character, as how she goes her life with Oblivion and Desdemona, they have this sort of like family kind of experience. We're only short, abruptly. I don't want to reveal too much because once again, spoilers alert, and I have yet to develop this part of the story more. But we do learn later on is that Ren eventually goes with Oblivion and they leave Desdemona behind with adopted parent because she had no choice. They had to avenge the kingdom. They had to defend, fight for the oppressed. Ren, again, was someone who supported the poor and the lower class because she herself was one who lived under those experiences and therefore could understand them. And as you know, years forward, when Oblivion was 15, Ren herself was 12. She died. And her story sort of ends from there, because she basically saved Oblivion. At one point, while they're trying to get to the main kingdom, she sacrificed her life, she got the arrow on their back, which, keep in mind, these arrows were shot by expert bowsmen. Even though they shot her back, arguably it's not the most vital organ, but it kind of shot through her back into her heart, so it was a sharp arrow. It was a very sharp arrow. Ren also, again, like I said, has a very small body stature. Physically, she's not actually that strong. I mean, she is pretty tough, don't get me wrong, and she could fight against opponents larger than her size. And there was a feat which I did mention to certain people, and I will say this also in this video as well. Ren at one point did fought out 1,000 warriors by herself. But this was when she was attentive. The reason why Ren died at that time, specifically that moment, is because at the time she purposely let herself get shot. Ren, her fighting style is that she's very capable anyways on her own, and she's very capable of fighting off multiple opponents at once. But sometimes, you know, when you're sacrificing yourself for others, you kind of have to let your guard down. It's either that or the presumed student will die. And of course, you know, her tragedy begins, and that's unfortunate, and we know that, you know, that happens. And Oblivion's life continues from then on, and he takes her, she lives on as a legacy for him. So while her life actually ends, the lives of people like Oblivion, Desdemona, and very other important people, even Mystique, either directly or indirectly, they are affected by Ren's actions. Remember, Ren is the reason why Oblivion lives. So therefore, him being alive is thanks to her, and him being alive affects other people. Like Soleil, like Oblivion, not Oblivion, like Violet, like all these other characters that I sometimes roleplay with time to time. Oblivion is a very important character, as you guys already know too, but part of the reason why he's important is thanks to Ren. Now that we've finished her backstory, and that I've took quite a bit of detail, let's go into her abilities. So, Ren's fighting abilities rely on her knife. She doesn't just use a knife, though. She can use needles, any small tools, like a small pin, or like a small, let's say, a sharp little leaf. She's very good at scavenging. She has a very good ability when it comes to makeshifting weapons. She might grab some, you know, little leaf here and there, maybe tie it up with a twig, tie it with a tree. Maybe put a leaf behind it. Make a little, shall I call it a little small catapult? Or we call them slingshots, so to speak. You know, little weapons. Not the most toughest of weapons, not the most durable of weapons, but they do the job well and they get the job done. And, well, you know, these weapons, again, like I said, they're not very good and they're not very capable, but hey, the moment you turn your back around, hits you in the heart, hits you in the head, hits a vital organ, you're knocked out, or you're probably killed. You know, knife maybe just impaled on your eye. Oh God, you're blind. Oh my God, I'm blind. No. Well, but you know, that happens. You know, she is not someone to be underestimated. She does tend to use that, and Ren is the perfect example of someone who uses stealth. And she is like an assassin in a way, too. She fights preferably on the roof. People who tend to notice Ren, they often notice her always above the roof. She likes to be above others to gain leverage. That's one of her favorite spots to be in, one of her fighting spots. She snipes people from above, you know, with a knife. You know, she likes to throw objects, too. Darts, like I said, you know, perhaps a shuriken. You might buy something, a quick, you know, utility knife. Small weapons, general. And she's also someone who likes to lay traps. You know, occasional smoke bomb, occasional bomb she might find. You know, a little bunch of knives underground. Suddenly you're chasing down some robber. He leaps up from the roof. He's like, ha ha, you're not gonna get me. You're not gonna get me, Red Devil. Oh no, ah. And then he falls on the ground and he impales himself by the knives, because he did not see them coming. You know, she just pulls the rope, boom, the knives stick out from underground, and down for the count. You know, she doesn't like to fight frontal assault, but she can do it. Like I said, she has a feat where she took down 1,000 soldiers, most of them because she did have a true traps at the time, but it's also because Ren herself, though she's of small build, and though physically not very, you know, physically shouldn't be so capable, and like I said before, in terms of her health, she's not at her best. She does go into disease. She does have a disease. We will learn more about her in Magnolia Tales is that she sometimes have fever. She just get cough because her body's not very healthy, and because she's in poverty, she doesn't have money to afford to care for these medicines. So her immune system is pretty poor. But because she trained herself so much, she has an acrobatic, and she's very agile. She can jump really high. She can do a lot of flips. She'd be the perfect rival to Soleil if they were to ever, let's say, rival in gymnastics. She does have that. Even though she didn't have any formal training, through observation, for watching assassins at work, for learning their movements, for having a few mentors in her early stage of life, she eventually adopted that. And let's see now. So she's someone who's very observant. She likes to use her surroundings to help her in fights. That's usually her abilities. She doesn't really have any magic of her own, unfortunately. Personality. Her biggest personality strengths are that she's very headstrong and she's very determined, very brave, very courageous, very tough. She is a hard character, not like Oblivion is a soft character. She's a tough character. So if you're gonna talk smack about her or you're gonna try to make her look bad, good luck. And she does protect those she stands for, and that also goes to Oblivion and other characters of mine as well. She does protect what she stands for. And she does so in a very aggressive way to make sure that no harm comes upon them. Her weaknesses in her personality are unfortunately that, well, she's not exactly the nicest of characters, and she does have that idea where she has tough love. She's a bit of a tsundere. So she would be, she's nice, and she does have a soft heart, but oftentimes not to show, because tough makes right, and I am tough, and And Ren can be very rude. Keep in mind, she is in poverty, so she doesn't have a lot of good background experience when it comes to learning manners, having common courtesy. So she dresses pretty, she's not really the best dressed. She smells bad, not the best, and she has really bad manners. She talks really badly, poor grammar, hard to understand her, very aggressive, likes to think on a lot when it comes to logic. So she likes to deal with thinking, this is the only way to survive. If I'm going to feed my whole group of, 5 fighters, if I have to have someone sacrifice themselves for the greater good, that would happen. So oftentimes her compassion is not really there. She's very logical, very cold-minded, mind you. And again, this is unfortunate, but when you're trying to survive out in the wild with barely anyone to support you, if anything at all, you have to do that. Now, her motives. Because she's dead already, we don't really have any current motives of her because she's, dead. But in the past, she was there to help the poor, and she believes that people who are held true to their ideals, people who protect those they care for, and those who really do want to survive, you have to prove yourself that you are the man. You are the alpha. You are the dominant one. You are the one to take action and to take initiative and to take leadership. Being responsible for her actions is what she strives for. What she lacks, however, is that she does not tend to think that compassion or being kind or caring for others is important. She starts to realize that more and more when she becomes more acquainted with Oblivion, with Desdemona, and the nicer group of people she later becomes surrounded with, before, unfortunately, she reaches her timely end. However, this will always become a main trait of hers when it comes to her own motives. And this, of course, goes to her central ideology as well, because, again, right makes right when you have the strength and power it means to do so. You have to prove yourself you're capable. And a few hobbies of hers as well. Her hobbies often include knife slinging, making fun of others. She has a habit of teasing people, likes to joke around. People realize Ren, they will notice that Ren does have a habit of joking, sometimes, she has a bit of a habit of playing people's emotions a lot. Comes down to, experience, And she does have a tendency to like to hang around the streets. She likes to play deals with people. And to say, I'll bet $10 to get your $20. I'll bet that I can throw that knife 100 feet up in the air. You probably can't even hit that far. And if you do, I give you all my money. Or, if I hit that mountain up high with that knife, and you can't do it, You, my friend, you give me all your money, all your clothes, and everything that you own. So, you know, she has that kind of life. Not exactly the most proper lives, as Soleil would say. You know, she does not have the most proper lives. She likes to fool around. Ren actually has a double personality. Like I said before, she does protect others. She does stand for others. She does have a playful side to her as well. I have to also mention. So in terms of her hobbies, again, she likes to joke around time to time, sneak on others. You know, if you ever see her non-canon story, she would sometimes dote on Oblivion and make fun of his crush on certain characters. She does do that. And, of course, if she's not trying to survive or getting food or just trying to make her living, she would sometimes practice with her knife, throwing objects, and just in general, testing her abilities against others. She's very keen to finding people who are worthy of her attention. People who prove themselves they are capable enough. Which, unfortunately, the person who plays Desdemona, Jacob, I'm sorry, but Ren likes you as her mother, but, you know, Desdemona has to do something to prove herself, be capable to really truly win Ren's respect, and that's something that you have to deal with. Now, as I come to a close, and as I come close to close about Ren as a character and who she's about, I like to say a few more things. Ren is someone who's tough. She survives, she fights, and she lives. And she's there to bring a legacy for the future. Even though she may not be alive anymore, and even though she may not physically be present in anyone's lives anymore, her actions are always there to remind us of the past wars that are often forgotten and never remembered again. We must always remember that even in the coldest of nights and in the hottest of nights, we must always be there to remember the actions and the dedication that Ren took, because if it wasn't for her, a lot of things that happened later on in the story, like what happened to Oblivion, what happened to Mystique, they wouldn't be here today. Ren, you will always be one of my favorite characters, and that is all I have to say. Thank you.